I appreciate everybody taking the time to get on today. Today, I want to talk about asset protection planning. This is a topic, that's never going to go away. We have clients that want to protect their assets, especially as they're growing their assets. What is the best way to protect what they have? And if you think about it, first we need to define what is asset protection. And I like to think about this. This is the peace of mind for yourself, your family, and your business. So what is it that helps you sleep at night? And that's what we want to do. We don't want to end up with a growing our assets and all of a sudden a frivolous lawsuit or a legitimate lawsuit comes in and takes everything away. As you think about asset protection, it's not just what you have, but it's how you own it. That is the biggest key to this. Ownership and title of those assets will dictate what's protected and what's not. So you have to start looking at what we can do. But first of all, let's really look at what you shouldn't do. And I see a lot of gimmicks out there, and gimmicks don't work. And it's fear, it's doing things, but doing them wrong. And sometimes it happens because we didn't plan ahead. So now we're scared and we're doing things, we see clients doing things they shouldn't do. The first thing is fraudulent transfers. This is a big no-no. It's one where if you're already in a lawsuit, if you're in the middle of a divorce, if the court case is already filed and happening, you can't transfer assets without court permission and without permission of the other parties involved. And that can bring, pretty dire consequences if you do it. The other one I hear is where can I hide my assets? Well, hiding assets isn't the right way to go about it. The way I look at asset protection, we should be able to show them exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, and it's good, it's right, and there's nothing that we have to worry about. One of the things that I see, and I see this happen, especially as people get a little bit older, they start putting their kids on their checking account. They put kids on their investment accounts. They put kids on all of their properties. Well, now that joint ownership is not only going to be a problem with your creditors, but now it becomes a problem for all of your children's creditors that you put on your accounts. So if they get into a car accident and get sued, you could lose all of your assets because you included them on your bank accounts and other assets for convenience. And you're going to tell the court it was for convenience. They're going to say, but the title is in their name. You lose the assets. So those don't work. Finally, I see just crazy things, constitutional trusts that say we're not liable for any of the laws of the United States. And for some of you, you think that's pretty crazy, but I have reviewed those trusts and they say that's exactly what it is. We don't have to abide by the laws of the US. We don't have to abide by, the US tax code. Those are just things that just don't work. So if you start thinking about this, the way you hold title to your property affects the rights a creditor will have. There again, think about this. The way you treat the property, that's the way everybody else is going to treat the property. So if you stay within the guidelines of true asset protection, you're going to be able to protect those assets the way you think about it. Now, if you look at, there's a lot of defenses out there. These are things that are realistic. These are things that work. Well, the first thing is we can go buy insurance. You can buy insurance to cover that liability. Now, the question is, how much insurance do you buy? It's is $1 million liability policy enough? Is it a $5 million policy, a $10 million policy? It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And it depends on what type of assets. And so you can go out to a normal property and casualty company. You could end up at Lloyd's of London. Lloyd's of London's unique because they'll take very unique situations and provide coverage. Now it's more expensive, but it's customized for exactly what you want. The next thing is exempt assets. State and federal law, they will protect specific assets. Retirement plans are one of them. Qualified plans are protected by federal law in every state, So if you were to put money into a qualified plan today, you put $1 million in a defined benefit plan and you filed bankruptcy tomorrow, that $1 million qualified plan is protected. In some states, you can protect life insurance. In Washington State, if the owner of the policy and the beneficiary of the policy are different, so one could be husband, one could be wife, and whatever that cash value in there is protected. So we always want to look at, what asset protection laws are available, and that way it protects the easy things. Then we move to the next things, trust. You can set up irrevocable trust. You can do domestic asset protection trust. Those trusts, if they're set up right, they have to be irrevocable. That's the key. If it's a revocable living trust, which a lot of people will do instead of doing a will, a revocable living trust does not have asset protection on it. An irrevocable trust does. And so when we set up an irrevocable trust, there's a separation of ownership. There's transfer or gifting of property into the trust. All of those things, if we set it up right, those can provide, in essence, bulletproof asset protection. So we can protect our spouses, we can protect our kids. Sometimes we can protect our business with those irrevocable trust. It's just, what are we trying to do? And remember, you're putting handcuffs on yourself, and you've got to be okay with those handcuffs. Property agreements can work. Those are very specific to how we treat different pieces of real estate and other investments. Then we can jump into entities, limited liability companies, corporations, family limited partnerships. All of those entities have an element of liability protection. They're great for the business world. They're great for the investment world. And there again, each one comes with some do's and don'ts. We just have to make sure we set it up right, that you maintain it properly, and then you treat it with the respect that it needs to be. So if you were to get sued, the courts will respect the way you've done it as well. Now we can get into offshore planning. Offshore planning brings some other issues. Offshore planning is available, but there again, it's easy to get it offshore. Now the question is, do you want to bring it back onshore? If you do, now we've got IRS issues that we have to deal with on top of the asset protection planning. And so you just have to be careful with offshore planning. Captive insurance companies is a great way to provide both risk management and protection of assets, and to protect the overall part of the business. Now, when I look at asset protection, part of this is separating the assets based on what they're being used for. If you look at it, we have business assets, personal assets, and investment assets. One of the hardest things to protect are the personal assets. Your personal home, if it's not protected in a state like Florida or Texas, that's a difficult asset to protect because it's not an investment asset, it's a personal asset. So we just have to be careful. But if you think about this, separate the assets based on their use and create a wall of protection between all of these assets so that we make sure everything's protected accordingly. When we do this, we want business assets on one side of that wall. We want personal assets on the other side of the wall. So as we do this, now you've got assets based on use in the right spot. So start looking at that list of assets. Business assets, equipment and vehicles, office equipment, office building, accounts receivable. Those are business assets. Now, remember I said based on use. So we might want to take that office building and move it from a business asset to an investment asset. Protect it away from the business risk. There again, we have to look at what's right for the business, what's right for the investment. But you create this wall and separation of assets so that we protect everything. So as you think about your asset protection and as you're working with your clients, remember we have to plan ahead. We don't want to do emergency planning after the accident happens. So make sure we set it up, make sure we do it right, and make sure we follow the rules. I appreciate everybody getting on. If you have questions, feel free to reach out, and we'll talk again next week. Thank you.